Rail fans, Jesse Swift and Sean Wingblade here, welcoming you to our late night special, the SwiftWings Speakeasy. For the next couple hours, anything goes. We're here to talk about life, film, and maybe some childhood trauma. If there's anything we didn't cover on Monday's show, or you think we should review a 3-decade-old movie, this is the place to make it happen. This show is designed for all of us to just get back and toss out the itinerary. Expect random trivia, rant casts, and loads more. We're like Birdie Bot's jelly beans. Might be dirt, might be bogey. Either way, expect disappointment. Donations work a little differently as you can decide where your dollar lands and whose goal you want to help reach. So whether you came here to ask about Jesse's stage play experience or to ask Sean what extraterrestrial creature gave him the name Wingblade, you've come to the right spot.
Always jamming out to that intro music. How's it going, everybody? No introductions here. We're just kicking it off with our special guest, Mara Kanopik. Welcome to the show again. You've been here once.
Thank you. I didn't prepare to kick anything, but I can be ready in a second.
That's right. Once we hear Sean's take on Dune, we might find something to kick. But
Oh, really?
Oh, as he strokes his evil beard. Welcome to the show, everyone. If you're new to the show, this is the SwiftWings Speakeasy, where we talk about anything, everything, sometimes nothing. Occasionally, we have themes, and it would be hard to avoid the giant release that was the sci-fi epic Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve. So we'll probably spend at least a good chunk of time talking about that today. But if anything comes up, we talk about whatever. We don't have to stay on one topic. And if you guys want to decide what we're talking about, we got that Streamlabs link right down there. Send in suggestions, topics, trivia, whatever you want to do. We really just run fast and loose here. Not always fast, but always loose. And speaking of loose, I got my loose juice right here.
Ooh, what flavor you got?
What are you drinking?
Passion fruit.
Angry Orchard.
Passion fruit.
Going with a cider tonight.
Passion fruit was the same thing I was drinking when this whole thing happened. So if any of you guys missed that, hop over to the Finely Tailored YouTube channel after the show, of course, and watch me become a beautiful, beautiful man.
Whoops, I gotta say, I mean, I'm just incredibly jealous. Like the bone structure, the contouring, all of it. Like,
I didn't.
I hope Lauren can make me look that good.
Well, I'm trying to get her to also come down to Spectacular, so we'll see if we can get something going there.
I had more of a high res image.
I mean,
you were working it and loving it, and I appreciate it.
I was wearing a hat, and then I took it off, and then that whole thing happened. We do have our goals going right now here, kind of ongoing goals throughout the month. That says about 200. That's if I go. If Lauren decides ultimately she wants to go, that's probably going to bump up. But collectively, that's what we're trying to get together so we can go down there because, yeah, it's not the same as coming from Australia, but it's not super cheap when you're running by the skin of your teeth.
I mean, you also did just, get married. It's it actually costs money to get married. I don't know if people do that or not.
Feels like you never have enough. It's like you can never be too ready to get married.
It is expense on top of unforeseen expenses.
So I guess kicking off, one thing I would want to ask both you guys is going into Dune, because I think we all probably had different levels of expectations. What were you guys thinking before seeing the movie? Mara first, because you're the special guest. And yeah.
I'm special. I would say that I expected it to look breathtaking, and I found it hauntingly beautiful to behold with my eyeballs, also my earballs, and
all the balls.
I hoped that it would finally put to bed the rumor and like the general opinion that Dune is an unadaptable story. I really try not to have any preconceived notions about like what exactly will happen in a movie, like from a plot standpoint. So I was curious to know where they were going to stop, knowing that it was a part one.
That was the fun game I got to play with myself the whole time watching. I'm like, are we stopping here? No, we're still going. Okay. But it wasn't like in that bad way. Like sometimes you're waiting for a movie to end and it's just like keeps going. I was excited. Every time it didn't cut to black, I'm like, oh, thank God, here we go. Sean, I know that you have a little bit of a different perspective because you don't have a Dooney background like me and Mara do. So, what were your thoughts prior to going in?
Sorry, I was horribly multitasking, trying to make us a spoiler overlay because I did not do that ahead of time.
I mean, I can say spoiler free and still talk about this for like 45 solid. So if you don't want to talk spoilers, we don't have to.
Accepted.
I think that's more impressive than anything else. What did I think ahead of time? I didn't know anything about Dune. I mean, I knew the pop culture aerial view. I've never read the book or seen the original movie. I've heard it teased and stuff. I have now seen the shield training scene, which Jesse told me to watch, and I was like, "Oh, this is great."
The day after watching Dune, since it's also on HBO Max, Lauren and I pulled up the '84 version. We watched that start to finish, and she's like, "This is something." She's like, "I was following this for like the first half, like pretty much the half that we got to see with Denis Villeneuve, and it's like the amount they crammed in that last 30 minutes. I was like, I know, it's bad. It's rough at that end.
So much.
I think really the core of the story is the Fremen, and that is the part that gets skipped over so atrociously. I'm not spoiling anything. It's fine.
You're talking about the David Lynch movie, so. Yeah.
That's true.
It's number one, it's a decades-old book series and a decades-old movie and a decades-old miniseries. So I'm definitely not going to spoil anything for anyone, but you're lucky if you don't know shit about Dune by now.
Yeah, I think I would say if I'm not going to feel horrible if we let some light spoilers slip, because the things that happen in this movie are essentially the same that happened in the David Lynch movie, just much better. So if you don't know, I feel like if you had an interest in Dune, Sean, maybe you would have done some research by this point prior to seeing the movie. So there's not too much we can really spoil.
Sure.
I'm not here just to shit on Sean. I mean, usually that's what the speakeasy is all about, is just how big of a dump I could take on Sean metaphorically.
Well, see, I'm super eager to hear. I assume that it was not as stimulating for you, and I would love to hear why.
That's actually a really good way to equate it. I think that it did a very good job, from what I've heard from obviously other people who enjoyed previous versions, the books, etc., everything else. It did a very good job at gearing the movie towards people who already knew the story. And so I mean that in the sense of here's this thing that you've had in your mind for, the movie or the book came out in the 60s. So, for 60 years, here's this idea of a thing, even if you haven't seen the previous movie. And here it is on screen in all its majestic glory, and it looks fantastic. And we get these big sweeping shots of going over the mountain terrain and seeing the city on Arrakis and just everything. But I didn't have any attachment to those things, and it didn't do a job well enough, in my opinion, to attach me to in those moments. So in those moments, it seemed boring, because it overstayed its welcome with the, I can't remember what the ships are called, but, essentially the helicopters,
the Thopters,
the Thopters. Yeah. Whatever. The Thumpers,
the dragonfly looking
the dragonfly looking things. Yeah. When they're flying over, I'm like, this is beautiful. It's well acted. It looks gorgeous. The music's great.
Jeff sneaking an appearance after all. Thank you for coming on the show.
I thought you were sleeping, buddy.
No, I had to come in just for that.
Essentially. Yeah. So it just it seemed like a good way to placate the book readers or people who already know the stories.
He corrected me. I think they call it Thopters for short, but yeah.
And I don't think it did a good job at explaining the backstory of stuff, including we were talking about the other day, the assistants, the human computers and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know. They're just smart people. They just know math. Dust Malchison's character didn't really. I don't remember hearing. I've only seen it the once. So I don't remember hearing him say it, but I know the other guy did. Those with the Atreides family. So
one thing I will let you keep going, not to pull a Kanye, but I will let you continue on that point. But I will say, when Lauren and I were watching the '84 one, it was the opposite problem, where they're just scooping with giant like ice cream scoopers, exposition and explanations, and they'll just like stop and give you just like a page full of notes on the world, and you're like, this is horrible. And I feel like it's such a hard line to try to be like, we want people to understand this without explaining every 2 minutes what's happening, who people are. And it's one of the reasons people have said it's unadaptable is because it's so dense. It's a thick book. It takes like a week to listen to it, you know? But continue.
I mean, essentially, it felt like, and two things is we saw it at 8:45 at night, and I had gotten up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and had a 12-hour day at work. So maybe I was tired. That could have played into it. I definitely want to watch it when I'm more. I do want to rewatch it. I wanted, like I said, about the cinematography and the explanation of the things they were showing us. I wanted to care more about the things they were showing us, and I just didn't. I just didn't feel attached to them. So those moments felt like they dragged on a bit. All of the action was cool. It was fun to do this and that, and you're catching up on all these other various storylines and jumping back and forth. I wasn't lost with what they were telling us. I just wanted more from it, and I just didn't get attached to what I was seeing.
You said you wanted more Fremen?
That's exactly. And to be honest, yeah, actually, because we didn't see very much of them. And I understand.
I have to give a huge shout out to Javier Bardem. Is such a perfect still guard, even though he wasn't in the film that much.
Yeah,
I got halfway through rewatching it today, and I was like, God, perfect.
And that was great. Yeah, it was great when he popped up, relatively early on. Then we don't see him again for forever in the movie.
In the original, you don't see him at all until Paul gets to the desert, and you're like, who's this?
I don't want to like denigrate and shit on the movie in any way, shape, or form. But I will say, like, positively wise, like I said, looks beautiful, sounds great, acted wonderfully.
Not to put words in your mouth. Are you saying the surface level seemed to work for you? It was just like the depth of enjoyment. There was something missing to connect with you.
It missed connection for me because I didn't know these characters, and they were making a big deal about these characters being a big deal. I'm like, cool, but I don't know why yet. Hopefully we'll get there. But I didn't feel like we got there yet because there's a lot of setup for the next movie. Essentially,
I do wonder if when this, hopefully, I mean, things are looking good-ish. Hopefully, when this becomes like a full cinematic experience, so you can be like, okay, let me sit down for 5 or 5.5 hours, whatever, and watch Dune. So that's really what it is. This wasn't Dune. This like, I think a lot of the most interesting things. There's a lot of great stuff in the first half of Dune, but I think there's really a lot of stuff that happens in the second half. And I was talking to Lauren today, and I was like, I don't want to be dramatic, but if we don't get Dune Part 2, because of my heart, I feel like I won't revisit this movie because it'll be just torturous. And she's like, well, that is a little dramatic. I was like, well, here's my counter argument. What if Fellowship of the Ring came out, bombed, and that was it?
Right.
How often would you go back and watch Fellowship of the Ring again? Like, it's a great movie on its own, but you want the rest of the journey. And it sucks. It's like for me watching the show Constantine that they got 13 episodes into and canceled. And you're like, okay. Let's see.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
From Brian, I would like to pose a question to Mara and Jesse, who seem to know about Dune more than Sean and I. How well did it closely adapt the book so far? That's going to be definitely a chunk of the conversation. I want to talk about that. I want to hear from Mara. Look, you had a point before this question, though. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that, I love the subjectivity of how people respond to films because I think that that's interesting, whether you agree or disagree. But I actually thought that the movie was much more geared to the people that didn't know the property, because I think that it had to be very carefully expositing. And I think it managed to do that without seeming clunky to the people that know the series and being accessible to people that didn't, because Dan went in as an experiment knowing nothing. He knew fundamentally nothing about everything Dune.
Dan and Lauren were on the same boat.
And when we came out, one of the things I asked him, I said, okay, ask me your questions. Like, what might not you have understood or wasn't entirely clear or this or that. And he had essentially no questions about how anything worked or who anyone was. He had a few questions, not spoilery things, but just a little bit about shaping how he thought about certain people with things that maybe were in the book that weren't in the film, or them going forward just a little bit. But he could follow it. He felt like it established what it needed to establish for him. And I'm interested because I love to hear that difference of two people that were completely unfamiliar with it that went in and had two entirely different experiences with it. So I think that's really fascinating.
On the other side of that, I think it's interesting to see like different people that have read the book and have different feelings about it, because I was reading people that just wouldn't quit about, like, they didn't go into the Mentat, they didn't have enough about the Baron, and they were like complaining about so many things. I was like, it's a different
every
medium.
book ever.
Yeah. It's just a different medium. And there's some things that like I was aware of things that were like cut for time or like not included. And I thought, I'm like, is this detrimental to the story? And like every time I was like, I don't think so. Like, I get why
The
it's
only
important
thing
in the book.
is imperial conditioning. I really think that was necessary for the thing that happens. It's supposed to be so surprising because of imperial conditioning. So I really wish that they had put in imperial conditioning, because it's really easy to talk about and kind of throw it away at some point and then just circle back to it later and be surprised and be like, oh, but this person, you know?
Right. Sean, what were you saying? I'm sorry. I did cut you off. I apologize.
Well, no, to go to your point about Dan too, and many people on Twitter too, both who had no idea or had some idea, etc. And I might be speaking for Jake, but because I saw it with Jake Berlin and Brian and a few other people, and Jake was the same way, I believe. And we rode together, so we had a nice long talk about it on the way home. And he basically said he had never seen the original, he hadn't read the books, he didn't know a ton about it, and he was all on board. And he posted that on Twitter, so I'm not spoiling his review. Like, he loves it. He's right on board with you guys. And I think we are on the same boat as far as our surface level, pop culture knowledge of the subject matter. So I don't think I'm alone. There's other people that I've read that have the same feeling, but it is such a two sides of the same coin type of thing. It's one or the other. I'm in the middle, and that's what I was going to get to. My last point was, it doesn't make me never want to see this movie. I don't think this is a bad movie in any way, shape, or form. It makes me actually want to read the book, or at least listen to the audiobook, because I don't have time to read. I bet I can do audiobook while I'm working. And I know you said Jesse took you like 10 days or something to get through it.
Yeah, I think it's about 22 or so hours. Yeah.
So now that movie season's over, I can actually listen to podcasts and stuff again. I think that's something I'm going to do is get get the audiobook and try to get through that, and maybe take a few weeks or so, because that'll be, maybe that will help me glom onto these characters. That
Brian is calling out Jake, though.
I would encourage you to just think a little bit about like maybe what your experience was. Like, I was a Tolkien fan, so like Lord of the Rings was familiar to me, but like when you watch the theatrical cut versus the extended cut, particularly of Return of the King, but there's so much that's left out that really helps to develop the characters and make you know more about their intentions, their purpose, and why their trajectory is what it is. And it seems so familiar now, but how that might have felt beforehand, where they didn't give you the full and complete picture until you got a director's cut. So I would ask you to consider forgiving it just a little bit, in the sense that like even the most epic fantasy properties have to trim the fat, and then you end up getting more of the big picture after the home video comes out.
My experience with it, I had never seen the extended cuts until literally 2 months ago, or less actually. I hadn't watched the extendeds until this most recent FCL season, when I had to study them for purposes. But
I don't understand the words that are coming out of his face.
I had never seen any of the Lord of the Rings until all three of them were out, though.
Wow.
They weren't movies I went to. I was in high school, so in 2001, I graduated in 2005. So they just weren't movies that I went to, that I glommed onto. They weren't something that my dad and my parents watched. So I think, though, to compare it to that, by the time I had gone to those, they already had the complete story out. So I could sit and watch the whole story and get the resolution. And that, because the way this movie leaves off, not to say it left a bad taste in my mouth, it just it left an unfulfilled taste in my mouth. I want to see the conclusion of the story. And I'm more excited for the second movie than I was last week for this movie to come out. So that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
That's Jeff just blowing Mara's mind in the wrong way.
and it makes me wonder too. Sorry. It makes, because the only book that I'm just not a huge reader. The only book series I've ever read outside of required reading for school is Harry Potter. And I've read, books 3 through 7 multiple times. So I wonder, from a different point of view, like when the first movie comes out and you see the wonder of sweeping over Hogwarts and you get the music going and you get that, you're like, oh, everything I've always imagined is now on screen. That's how I imagine someone else feels about this movie, where you have the imagery of like, this is everything I've thought of for 60 years or whenever you read the book or saw the previous movie.
When I am 60 years old.
When I did my little audio review, which, by the way, if you guys aren't following us on our audio forums, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, please do that. Just type in Flick and Reel. When we were talking about the movie, I said, listen, Denny, and this is like the first time I said this about a book adaptation, Denny out-imagined my brain. And so, like, seeing the realization of stuff, I was like, my brain was not firing on this, like, functional of a cylinder when I was listening to this book. Like, it's so much, the scope's bigger, the way I could feel everything. And you'd think listening to an audiobook that helps, but no, the amount of energy I thought that he really put behind it was astounding. And Mara, I think you'd appreciate this. I want to talk about the cast for a second, because how do you get that much moisture in a desert? Am I right?
Okay, we were arguing earlier on my show. I would love to know if anyone has a strong opinion. We were arguing the moisture factor of Timothée Chalamet versus Oscar Isaac. I'm very clearly in one camp, and I think it's objectively the right camp. I don't want to bias anybody. Does anyone have a strong opinion?
Yeah, the one that was sprawled out naked in a chair.
Yeah, right?
We're waiting for TikTok to catch on to that. We're waiting for them to find it. Yeah.
They'll get to it for sure.
Absolutely.
They get to everything.
The Timothées for the young boys and girls, and Oscars for us adults.
Yeah. I mean, Rebecca Ferguson is just glamorous and gorgeous in everything she does.
Agreed.
when we were first watching it, when they arrive on Arrakis, and this is like in the trailer, but the ships are coming down and it opens up. Lauren leaned over to me. She went, Daddy, sorry.
My goodness.
Hans Zimmer's score I knew was going to be great, but also I had been listening to it for like 3 weeks, like start to finish on Apple Music.
Wow.
It came out a long time ago. I think when the movie released internationally, the soundtrack came out. And so I've just been, every time I go on a walk, it's just editing stuff for the podcast and listening to Dune.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I hadn't heard a frame of the music until I watched the movie.
I kind of wish I would have done that, though, because the way it just, like, fills your senses. I've heard the term eargasm before, and that's pretty typical of Hans Zimmer. I did say when I was doing the review, I was like, I think this is the best Hans Zimmer score. At the time, I wasn't thinking about Man of Steel, which still might be my favorite Hans Zimmer score, but this is like, they're like neck and neck. Like, these are the two. All the imagery was really working for me. I think my only complaint really, and I don't know if they're gonna have an extended cut. It sounds like they might not, but like, just like with Lord of the Rings, I feel like it would benefit from another 30 minutes. I could use more Baron. I want more Duke Leto. Dr. Yue, at first I was like, I think the 84 movie had more of him. Then I rewatched it. I was like, not really, actually. I think the only time we got a lot of Dr. Yue was in the book.
Yeah.
And I think what they do with this character, again, avoiding spoilers where I can, it would be better or beneficial to spend more time with that character.
Yeah.
Also, I think Upon my rewatch, I'm watching on HBO for the second time. I'm going to go back to theaters. So before anyone starts shaming me, I'll go back to theaters and see it. But I wanted to see what it would be like to watch the movie with subtitles. And when you have this dense of a film with this many, like a whole vocabulary, I think a lot of people might have had problems absorbing that and like getting familiarized with it. Would benefit from a subtitle screening.
Yes, 100%.
That's actually something Dan and I are going to do. We're going to specifically drive to a theater that's much further away than our regular theater because they have a captioned on-screen version. Which honestly, that's one thing I'm hoping comes out of pandemic, since the theatrical model is changing and a lot of movies are getting day and date and there are fewer movies on screens at big multiplexes. I hope that they start putting, I would love it if like 8:45 p.m. Dune, right next door in the next cinema, 8:45 p.m. Dune with closed captioning on screen, because number one, just from an accessibility standpoint, how great would it be if you are a member of the deaf community to walk up to the box office and instead of saying, hi, can I please have an accessibility device, just to be able to buy your ticket online and just roll into your theater like everyone else. Or for people that are even just like, hey, it's a movie with jargon, or it's a movie like a real quippy, fast talking, like a Tarantino or something, where it's like, I'm going to want to need to like keep up with this. I would love to see multiplexes start doing that with all their extra screens.
Sean, you were talking about rewatching Middle Earth stuff for the FCL. I was kind of doing the same thing with the Hobbit movies because I never really dived into the Hobbit movies. They weren't my favorite. And the amount of times I had to pause it since I had subtitles on when I was writing notes, I was like 5 seconds, pause, notes, pause. And like you absorb so much more information. And I think Dune, when you have terms like the Ganjabar and the Bene Gesserit, and we haven't gotten to the Muad'Dib stuff, but it really is another language. Like it's definitely inspired by, I don't want to make the wrong assumption, but kind of like a Arabian language. Does that seem accurate?
All the captions.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was derived from Arabic or Farsi. I honestly don't know. But I mean, the illusion is very clear. Desert people, desert power. And then people coming in and taking resources from them.
Right. There's a lot of subtly non-subtle things in the film. Chris Adams is saying Arabic. Yeah. And you can definitely tell but I think it's very beneficial to listen to the audiobook, because I think if you're just trying to read this, I cannot head pronounce half the verbiage in this book. But I'm trying to remember the name now, the name that the Fremen have for the sandworms. Do you remember off the top of your head?
No. One thing I really wanted to do beforehand was do a reread like right before, but I kind of purposely didn't, because like being familiar enough, doing multiple rereads and then having seen the Lynch film multiple times, I was like, I just want to go and see how do they choose to do it, instead of I was worried I would impress too much on how I wanted to see it, but I'm so excited to do a reread. And I think I might see if Dan wants to read it with me, although I suspect that much like Sean, he needs just due to time management, the audio version, which is totally fine. He loves his audiobooks.
Thank you, Brian. This is correct. The Shai Halud.
Yes.
Which reminds me, I won't get into the specifics. I love what they did with Dr. Leah Kynes in this movie. Like it was a gender and race bend, and they kept pretty much true to everything about the character. It wasn't noticeable. But I'll say the end of the character's arc is done significantly better in this than even the book or the Lynch film. It was an epic improvement. So I really like that.
We improved a lot on the Lynch film, particularly with the depiction of the Baron.
Oh my gosh. Lauren had a hard time.
With a capital P.
Oh, it's a lot of things. Lauren had a hard time looking at the screen. She's like, that's one of the most revolting things I've ever seen. And I was like, yeah, because she thought the gelatinous Stellan Skarsgård was an issue, and I was like,
oh, you mean the previous version? She had a hard time watching.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The Lynch movie it had some really problematic depictions,
like milking a hairless cat
represented.
Yeah, we had cat milkings. We had some real rapey things going on in there too.
Gotta Google it just to see what. Oh boy.
Well, and also, I mean, it says some very pointed things about same-sex relationships and AIDS. So I'm very glad that a heavy omission was made on any allusion to any of that because it never needed to be there in the first place. Because why?
And I think with the time that the book was written, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in certain aspects, and I think that comes from the female representation in the story, where I think Lady Jessica has always been awesome, and even in the book, I think Chani, Zendaya's character, there's room for improvement. I don't feel like she offered very much in the book, and especially I just finished reading Dune Messiah, which is kind of rough, to be honest. I was like,
it's almost like a George R.R. Martin, where it doesn't want to make you feel good.
Well, yeah, it's depressing for one, but two, it's kind of spinning in place, and then we get to the end, and people are talking about Denny possibly doing this as a trilogy, doing Dune in 2 parts, which is understandable, and then Messiah really only needs to be 1 movie. There's either enough stuff you can cut out, or it's just not as dense. It's just a lot of talking. But if they did that, and that's like the potential end of that trilogy, that's a weird place to end off on, because there's not a climactic much of anything in that book.
I mean, I think that they could potentially see Dune itself as a trilogy, because I think that, especially since they didn't film it back to back, that they might take to heart that people want more development from the characters. And if they let the second part breathe a lot, I don't think it would feel bloated, especially because they don't all have to be 2.5-hour movies. But I think that it could work out well if they actually just did a trilogy of Dune.
I think so too.
I thought this movie could have ended maybe 20 minutes earlier on a different scene, not where it did end, and leave it more of a cliffhanger instead of, because they wrapped up the scene we saw and then they're off to the next adventure. But maybe at the previous conflict, they could have like almost cut it halfway and leave you wanting more type of thing. And in the moment, you'd be like, oh, come on, what's going to happen to the dude?
I totally see where Sean's coming from. And I think also from the perspective of anybody that hasn't consumed it, which is natural. You shouldn't have to consume a book to enjoy a film. My thought process is I can't undo that from my brain. So for me, knowing the full arc of the story, that is the spot to cut, because it's a shift. It's a shift in character. It's a shift in arc. Everything shifts from like that point on. Otherwise, it would lead to a very weird first act of the next book. They had to get over a certain hump before they had a good starting place, I think, for part 2.
Yeah, I firmly agree. I think that I'm going to be mildly spoilery for a moment just to explain my point, but I'm going to not be super spoilery.
It does say possible spoilers.
Correct.
Okay. Just warning people in case they want to mute for I'll wave my hands when I'm done. I think that the end of the film is necessary because even with Fellowship, which is a first part of a larger story, that film feels complete. There is a beginning, middle, and end, and the characters have arcs. I think that Paul's arc in the film, that last piece is necessary, because how he feels about his future and his destiny related to House Atreides, and where he feels like his place is in the Empire. And, Rebecca Ferguson wants to get off world ASAP. Mm-hmm. That would be what Paul from the beginning of the film would want to do. Go back to Caladan, go back to certain safety, become the new Duke, and find a way to just move forward. But the fact that Paul, with quiet, still confidence, certainty, knows that the trajectory of his life has changed and that he's going to peacefully move with purpose and into the desert with the Fremen, I think is necessary for this movie to feel like it has a full and complete story that also establishes things that you can continue in another movie. I feel like everyone would have criticized it for being only a movie of setup, and that it would be like the blue balls of cinema for a fantasy movie. So that's just my 2 cents on it, but I get why a lot of people have said it feels like it was perhaps a little long.
Mara, you bring up Caladan,
I'm
and
done.
I wanted to talk about like the realization of the planets. Obviously, we spend the vast bulk of the film on Arrakis, which it's hard. I think it's really difficult to make a desert planet that's very barren for most of it, other than like a little city here or a Keech somewhere. It's hard to make it look visually interesting, and I think they did a really great job. But I love the look of Caladan. Caladan could be really dreary. It could come across very plain, but it had some life in it. And one of my favorite shots in the beginning is Paul realizing where he's going, and it's him like cupping up a little bit of water and just thinking about like where I'm going. I won't see this anymore. Like it is a precious commodity. And I heard it specifically that was a complaint in certain reviews. Like, we don't have time for this. Move on. Keep going. And I was like, so much of Dune, or what I like about Dune, is like being immersed in things and being. Denny, I think, was trying his damnedest to put you, the audience, in the minds of these characters, because it's such an exposition heavy book. The David Lynch movie is such an exposition heavy film, and it doesn't work as in this medium. So he was trying to use subtlety here and there to try to bring you in on that. I think he succeeded, but I guess it's not working for everybody.
I mean, one thing I'll say is that, geez, oh my gosh.
Excuse you, sir.
Shots fired.
Shots taken, probably.
I really deeply resent anyone that ever has the perspective of, well, you didn't understand it, you weren't smart enough for it, so that's why you didn't like it. And I think that perspective is garbage. But I will say this, I do definitively think that people that thought that Dune was like boring or style over substance, Dune has so much to say. Like, the book has a lot to say. Even the Lynch movie has a lot to say. This movie has a lot to say, and it's almost more relevant now than when it was written or when it was made or when it was made again. And I think that if you're not listening, that would be a reason why you would not like it.
Listening might get easier with the subtitles. So I recommend anyone that's seen it once, feels iffy on it, also go back to the theaters because it needs that money. But watch on HBO Max for the next couple weeks with subtitles on. I feel like there might be a different appreciation level because it's a lot to take in on your first viewing.
Oh, true. I mean, even not just the terminology, but like those quiet moments, like with him in the water, like that moment is saying something. It's all about, is someone listening enough to want to hear it?
And I think there's moments with, whether it be with the visions or the quiet conversations that he has with Jessica, you really have to be paying attention to hear what's being said, what it means. It's not like as inaudible as, say, Tenet, but I think there's sometimes overlapping sentences and you hear things because he's getting audible like visions of Bene Gesserit speaking to him and stuff, and you hear like old lines like "the sleeper has awakened." And I wish they would have punched up a little bit the line about fear is the mind killer.
I was just about to say that.
That's like the line, right? That's the line that represents Dune, and you have Jessica like whispering it outside of the room while Paul is with the Ganjabar and Helen Mohayam, so the Reverend Mother. I struggle with these names, you guys. I read the book. I struggle with some of the names. I remember the characters. And it's brought up again, and I was like, punch it, guys. That's your Avengers Assemble. Like that's the line of dialogue.
Well, and Rebecca Ferguson is already such a whisper talker, which, don't get me wrong, it's sultry AF. But I was like, oh man, that's like the one thing everyone needs to hear. And I knew what I was supposed to hear, but I know that it definitely was not perfectly audible. And I do think our sound was calibrated really well. So that's clearly in the mix. That's not a theater issue.
And I think, like you said, it's like there's things that we're listening for, we're waiting for, whether that be verbiage, dialogue, etc. And I think if you're taking this in for the first time, it's like mumble what? Like, I don't know what that was. So I'm hoping that this film upon like rewatches and stuff will have a lasting impact on people.
Well, yeah, especially its themes. I mean, like what it says about, colonialism and integrity. There's just, it says so much with so little. That's one thing I love is like, it's not a dialogue heavy film per se with as much crap as it has to establish. And it just does so much with so little. This film is bonkers, banana pants, beautiful.
And I got to pass one more thing onto Mara here to have a conversation about. There is a lot of people online currently taking issue with or trying to address that they believe that there's a white savior complex with this story, with this film. And I know that you know a lot more than your average filmmaker when it comes to the story of Dune. So I would love for you to enlighten maybe the audience watching, perhaps Sean, perhaps anybody that might have that opinion. And obviously this is not in a way to bully or I know more than you, but I think people have it pegged a little wrong. But Mara, take it away.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's a little too early to tell. Like, let's just say hypothetically, first and foremost, we think we know where Paul is going. We've already seen, though, that some of his visions are not accurate. Like, what if, let's just say, Paul face plants and Chani is the new person? Like, I'm not saying that's what happens, but I'm saying, like, we don't even know as, like, the person that's watching this movie. So I do think that in a way that's projecting a little bit of an argument people want to have on something that has already established itself as not being entirely decisive from a what is the film literally telling you will happen standpoint, because effectively he's an unreliable narrator in the sense that his visions have not all been accurate. And we've seen
love that representation. They decided to do something different with, like, it's accurate to the idea in the books of his visions and about him looking through time and it being like an ever-changing flowing like river, and it's not always the same thing. And they show him see a character speaking to him one way. That character doesn't make it through the movie. They never have that conversation. And I think that's a great way to represent that, because he's not as omnipotent as some people might think. And I understand if you don't know what's coming next, seeing this and be like, oh, it's a white savior or like issue because he's the savior of these people. He's going to go ahead and lead them. Especially when you get into Dune Messiah, the next book, you're like, oh God, that's not, there was a mistake made somewhere. The Fallout, you could have called that movie Dune, or that book Dune Fallout, because that's essentially what it is. And so I'm asking for patience for those of you that might have that particular issue. I think there's a lot of valid issues, but if that's one of them, hold fast.
Well, also like something, it's kind of like Deadpool, for example. It's a movie that talks about, or even like Scream, a movie that talks about all the tropes that movies do and why they're dumb, but does them anyway, because part of the point is A, entertainment, but B, it's like it's showing you the absurdity of those things at the same time. Think about the absurd nature of the idea that someone can come in to an environment that is not theirs, convince the indigenous people of something effective to a religion, whether that religion ends up being accurate or not. Again, that's just, it's another thing that we can look at and reflect on as a society. We've done this to people on planet Earth. Like, that's messed up. You can still show it happen, whether he is the savior of the Fremen or not, giving absolutely nothing away, to say you can still show it happen and then demonstrate that it's problematic,
Sorry, I was trying to look up a specific Frank Herbert quote, because he went on, he had some interviews and he was saying that Dune is really a cautionary tale. And I think that right now remains to be seen, but I'm just letting people know that it's coming. I want to bring up that we have a Streamlab from our good buddy Jake Yakabetta, and he says, as someone who knew nothing about the book or old movie going in, I thought it was fine. I have no complaints, but I really want to see the sequel. I wasn't blown away, but I enjoyed it enough. To be fair, though, I appreciate the scope and epic building. I would say that's a perfectly fair review, somebody going in completely fresh. I
Definitely.
encourage. We're gonna have some time, guys. We're gonna be able to sit on this for a while, so I encourage everyone to either watch the movie again with subtitles, listen to the book, read the book. You can watch the David Lynch movie. I don't know if it's that helpful as far as like taking in this new content. I think it might just end up getting you more confused because, like I said, my wife watched it, and by the time she got the second, or it's like the third. They cram the second half of the book and do like a third of the movie, and you're like, wow, what? And David Lynch decided that like the weirding way was going to be shouting at your gun and then it fires, and it's like it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess.
By the way, I actually see Errol Owl in the chat. Yes, I loved that. So I'm Middle Eastern, and I've spent time mostly in the UAE, but and also Egypt and stuff. And I cannot begin to tell you how I know that a lot of people think like, oh, what's that great about literally just like sand everywhere and seeing nothing but sand and no trees, nothing alive, just sand. Sunsets in the desert. Some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Oh, the cat's licking his butthole.
We'd love to see it.
Yeah. But I was just so lucky to see that that could be something that's captured, whether like, Iraq is not actually the Middle East, although it is the Middle East, but just bringing to light for other people the idea that something that barren and that what is seemingly monochromatic could look so beautiful.
I want to ask Sean, because this was a new concept to him. What did you think of the graboids? I mean, sandworms in this film.
The giant buttholes coming out from under the earth.
Hey, they had brine-like teeth, man. It's not a butthole.
I thought
my butthole doesn't have teeth. Does yours?
I'll never tell. I thought you ass.
I did.
Sean's the one person that'll be okay in prison.
Come at me, bro.
Literally or figuratively?
Wait, have you seen that movie though, where like
From
the
afar.
girl has
teeth?
Yeah.
Is it called? I think it's just called Teeth or something.
It is. I got like halfway through it, and I was like, I am very uncomfortable.
I saw the cover art. I was like, I'm good. I don't need to watch this one. What did I think? I thought they didn't explain it well enough with the whole writing aspect that we see a little bit of towards the end. So they do comment on the one that we see when they do the whole rescue mission, where they're like, "Oh, this is a big one." So you're going to anticipate scale, right? You're going to anticipate it's going to be huge. And then, it's coming surface, and then it just goes underneath, and all of a sudden, there's just fucking ginormous, football field size, whatever, thing right up from underneath. But then later on, we see the one, and it's in the trailers that comes out of the sand, and Chalamet's character is facing him down. Paul. I was like, I can't remember the name, Paul.
The one pronounceable name.
The one, Paul. And then later on, then we see a couple of them that they're being ridden, and so it's like, all right, they don't, and I felt like they didn't explain that well enough, other than throwing a thumper out there at one point.
They tell you early on that the Fremen essentially have a spiritual connection to the worms, and it is not only spiritual, but it is symbiotic. It's I guess symbiotic was the word I was looking for.
I was just waiting. Where do they pull their tail out and hook it in with the horse?
We're
not going there.
They become one together.
The worms. The reason that Arrakis is the source of the spice and the only place spice can be found is really the worms. It's something that is like produced by them being there. Everything that the Fremen do is
worm poop.
Yeah, sure.
Or dandruff, one or the other. It's flaky.
So I think the reason it was teased is because they're like, this will be explained. This is what's coming next. This is we are giving you a little taste of, because I think if it's just Paul walking out in the desert and then black, you're like, okay, so you're supposed to ask the question, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're supposed to see that and be like, what, how, why, when? And then part two.
it is just one more thing in the list of things. Like, I wish they would have explained that more, but at the same time, also knowing there is going to be a part 2, but also to go back to my own deferment of my own point was that it makes me want to know more, meaning I want to listen to the book. So it's all wrapped up in one. It's not a black and white issue. It's
I have to comment on Garth's comment here. I don't know if he dropped a digit or didn't know that there's, including Frank's son Brian, there's 16 Dune books.
Yeah,
which was news to me. I was talking to Lauren. She's like, "How many Dune books are there?" I was like, "At least a handful." I looked up. I was like, 16. There's 16 books. I have consumed dose.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
But this is only supposed to be the first book, right? Yeah, at least this duo of movies. Okay.
Yeah. 6 by Herbert. Well, technically, Brian is also a Herbert. So, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, 6 by Frank. I've heard mixed things. I haven't read any, so I will not have an opinion. Mara, have you read the Brian Herbert ones?
I have not read all of them, no.
Okay.
3, I believe.
3 of
if
them?
I'm counting correctly. Yeah, I should finish
4
them.
more. I got 4 more Frank books to read, I guess.
Honestly, you're going to be really surprised at how quick they sort of go. Because at least for me, some of it is just like framing in my mind how I think something would look. Because when I can speed read, but when I read books that I'm just reading for enjoyment, not like a textbook or a manual or something, I really savor what I'm reading because I'm trying to effectively like make a movie in my mind. I know some people don't do that. They just contemplate and just digest the words. But I found that every book further I went quicker because I already knew the people, I knew the places, I knew the things. And so it was just, like an old timey camera, I could just turn it more quickly. They're going to fly by.
I'm excited to look into. Now, here's my question: do I start Children of Dune, or do I watch the James McAvoy sci-fi series first? I've heard the sci-fi series aren't bad. I haven't watched them, but I heard they're okay.
You really should. The William Hurt, very underrated dude, by the way. The 2000, right? Sci-fi miniseries, quite easy to enjoy.
I think, the casting this time around was improved all the way around because if you're Patrick Stewart, I love you so much, but Master at Arms, you are not.
No, I love the pug though. The one thing that this movie had was a severe absence of pugs.
I saw when I was looking for the shield training scene. I saw that screen cap of the pug of the king holding the pug. I was like, oh, there's the dogs.
Later on, there's a battle, and the pug is just being carried the whole time. It's awesome.
Can we talk about whatever that was Piter or the Baron's pet? That weird spider thing with human hands?
Oh.
It reminded me of something out of American Horror Story.
Yeah. It looked like leathery oil spider thing. There's nothing that's not in the books. It's just there.
I don't know if Brian heard me in the theater. As soon as it popped on screen, because we're seeing it from the rear view, I was like, Anthony. I said it just immediately. I was like, oh no, that's definitely not the same thing.
I want one. I want to ride it like it's a pony.
There's some visual choices that were made, especially with the Baron. I thought was greatly improved. I like there's a certain scene where the Baron's avoiding danger, and I think he was just rushed out of the room in the original cut. And this one, he floated up to the ceiling Hereditary style, and was just up in the corner hovering. I was like, I like that. I like Stellan Skarsgård works for me. I really like what they do with his voice. He's ruthless.
The makeup is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Can we? How many nominations do we think Dune gets?
Okay, number 1, I legitimately think these are the best visual effects I have ever seen. Smoke, fire, and water are the 3 things that are most difficult to computer generate and seamlessly weave into especially weaving them into the foreground of a frame, it was almost indistinguishable from, like, I don't know where they were blending, and I can't wait to see more behind the scenes features about it. But breathtaking, and it is going to be on my list for my winner for visual effects. I don't know if it's going to win, but that's where my heart is going to put on my Oscar ballot. But I mean, I think it wins a shitload of technical awards. It's at least going to be nominated. I mean, sound design, sound editing, score, cinematography is a solid one, I think.
How excited are you guys that this is it Greg Fraser? Is that his name? The cinematographer?
Oh, yes.
He's doing Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Batman.
All right.
No, yes, only because for IG purposes, like, trust me, it's going to get real hairy because it's like there's already
well, to be
screenwriters.
We'll already be like a couple rounds in, I think, by the time the Batman comes out, and then we have to wait for it to come out on DVD before it's part of the actual questions.
Yeah.
But yes, I get, because now, like, by the time next season starts, we will have Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, well, and we already have Predator, Predators, and the Predator.
I hate
it's
that.
Just a mess.
I just want to be like the one from the 80s, the one most recently, and the Topher Grace one, please. Thank you.
Right. But yeah, I mean, were there any other, like, especially the sound, by the way, the score blended in with the sound design so well. It was like they were tailor-made for one another. It was,
well, I think when you talk sound design and music or score, I think the best example of that's honestly, like, circling back to the Sandworms. The feeling of, like, dread and suspense that I got during those scenes, and the way that, like, the ground shook, and, like, when the worms would move, the mass of them was making, like, caverns in the ground. Like, the second that they moved, all the sand just dropped down, and you realize that these dunes are not, like, just made by the wind. They're made by, like, the worms traveling through and
leaving in their wake.
Before I ever knew anything about Dune, I always just thought of the sandworms as, like, tremors, you know?
Oh,
but
yeah.
Seeing the scope of them, I'm like, my God, this is it's different. These things could eat like 3 graboids at once. Which, by the way, give me a Tremors reboot. I'm ready for that. Garth says, the music was gorgeous. The bagpipes got me crying. I'm used to hearing them at funerals.
I had listened to the score twice prior, but a couple weeks ago when it first launched. And then watching the movie, it sounded great, but nothing stood out to me as a theme. Like in the sense, like, if you hear, like, Hans Zimmer's, like, The Thin Red Line, you hear The Dark Knight, you hear Man of Steel or Interstellar, whatever, you're like, oh, that's from that movie. You know that. And so I need to re-listen to it and rewatch it, of course, where I can associate a specific sound or theme where, like, oh, okay, that's the Dune one. And
the one from the trailer, I'm trying to remember when it comes into the movie, but the one that sounds very like tribal, and
it's like percussive.
I'm not going to try to, like, replicate it, but it has, like, the lady, like, oculating at the end of it. I don't know if oculating is a word. I don't know. She's singing, sort of. But that, every time I heard that, like, in the trailer stuff, to me, that was the Dune theme. But it might not be, but that's the track that stuck out to me. Yeah, the woman singing. I don't know what the word for that would be. Because, you know, there's a word for when it's got the tribal reverb. I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking.
Sure. I remember a part where there was a lot of drums, and I'm trying to think of. It might have just been kind of like that end scene right before they're walking off into the desert.
I think there's also some big pieces.
Garth got it right here.
When the attack is happening, the instrumental part of that, I believe, is also happening.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Man, what just a great high octane action set piece that Invasion was. Plus, Dan, by the way, one fun fact: he thought that that Oscar Isaac's character he got the impression from the trailer that he might not be such a great guy, which I thought was so interesting. Because again, like Duke Leto is awesome, and that's what makes it so
Duke Leto's
heartbreaking.
He's one of the best people.
From the trailer,
and so I loved the idea that he had to like get sold on this guy and then just get him taken away. It was so funny to watch him get upset.
He's so stoic in a lot of his scenes, and I think I saw it as a TV spot because I didn't watch the final trailer because I was like, I'm gonna go watch it. I don't need to watch anymore. The scene before they leave, it was Caladan. When he says, "Whatever you choose to be, you're my son." You know, that led me to okay, he is a good guy. But I don't think that was in like the first trailer or two, and I think I saw it as a TV spot. So I might be with Dan on that, where they didn't give Oscar much to do because he wasn't, the main character. He wasn't Paul. So he was just kind of standing there being a big Duke most of the time, not really doing a lot of emotional
about getting
stuff in the trailer.
Attached to people. I think Duncan, Idaho was much improved.
Oh my God, yeah. I got to say this. I was unprepared for seeing Jason Momoa's lower face. I didn't understand what I was seeing, and I was confused.
I said that out loud.
It's moisture all around both ways, however you get it. We may see Jason Momoa again. Keep seeing these movies. Just saying. You might get him back.
Let me put it this way: you don't cast Jason Momoa to see him for like 16 minutes of screen time, people. Like let's use our brains. Same thing with some other people that are big actors.
He's a very sexy, very attractive man right now. If he comes back in the way that potentially he does in this story, it will be nightmare fuel, and I'm not ready for it.
I think it could potentially be like that kind of like scary hot kind of thing where you're just like, I'm scared, but it's kind of working.
Do you think that's what Khaleesi thought? I'm a little scared, but
well, we already talked about the whole Khaleesi of it all.
Brian said he was perfect casting. Duncan Idaho, whereas he's very important in the books, never stood out as that interesting of a character to me. So I think giving the chemistry of Jason behind it really, really works for it. I'm gonna pull this up really quick so we can get what I think is the Dune theme.
Do it. Let's get pulled down.
It's like
Warner Brothers will come after.
It's the last like 10 seconds. Okay. Do you have audio?
Do you? No.
Nope.
Yeah. You gotta say share audio.
Yeah, I forgot. You know what, Sean? I'm new to this. I've only been doing it like a year.
Yeah, geez, Sean, lay off.
I've been doing it much less. I have no idea what's happening.
Okay. That's right.
My show's a mess. Trust me. You guys are so much more professional.
All right.
That I can hear as like a theme.
This is the Dune theme to me. Oh, and the buffering.
Together, can we stand a chance?
Of course, the buffering.
Yeah, it's with the gaps in there. I definitely had that loading for like 5 minutes, and it's still like, nope. All right, forget it. Whatever. Moving on.
Looked up in
Perfect.
Paul's
Yeah, it says Paul's Dream is the song, I think it was.
Okay.
So I wonder if that's the one that has the Kayla, hey, hey.
Right.
That's pretty good, right? That's good. It's not racially insensitive or offensive in any way. I like how as we start running out of fuel, we start getting more viewers. So I appreciate that. If you guys haven't already, please like this video. If you have something that happened this week in like movie news or something that you want us to talk about or cover really quick, you can submit that down on the Streamlabs down there. Otherwise, what's been going on with everybody?
This was only themed Dune because it's the most recent thing we saw or did.
Yeah.
We can talk about whatever.
We certainly can.
I'd like to point out that I successfully did 40 plus minutes of Dune, which you guys questioned my ability to do.
I don't think we went all non-spoilers, but we did go at least a solid hour.
only spent 94 seconds talking spoilers.
I start sprinkling it in. We start talking about who died and who didn't, and I stopped caring. Because I was looking at the chat and I was like, okay, the chat has seen Dune, so I didn't feel too bad.
So something that this commenter, which sorry, I don't know your name, from Twitch. Apparently, there were Caucasian in the book. I don't know how true that was. And I don't know if they're trying to add a diverse cast for the overseas money. I think that casting is casting, and it's a space opera, so they could be any color or shape.
There's no reason to have a fully Caucasian cast. And
true.
Before I really knew a whole lot about the Dune thing, just the concept of the Fremen being like these desert people and stuff. When I watched the original, and I was like, okay, these people are all like 90% Caucasian, and some of them might even have like bronzer on their face or something. Like, I was like, this is bad. This is really bad. So when you have characters like Javier Bardem and Zendaya and stuff, I think is a great choice. And just sprinkling around like wherever you can. For whatever reason, I get Paul being white. I don't know why, but like I do. But it's like everyone else. Like, just, they could have made the Baron a different ethnicity. They could have done a lot of different things, but I think that it was a good choice. And I, reading the book, saw the Fremen as being non-Caucasian, if that's what Brian's asking. Sorry.
Chris, do we need to send help?
Oops.
He was popping in to say help.
Just pooping into say help before work.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Good morning, CB. How you doing?
So he's in the bathroom, just help.
But apparently saying it with his rectum.
Well, he must have had a Taco Bell recently.
So how, between you guys, so how close was it to the book? Did they leave out any glaring things that couldn't be maybe pushed off to a second movie and explained better in a tighter wrap up versus like you were Jesse, I think you were telling me about Sting's character, right? He was
Fade Rotha, yeah. So rewatching the 84 movie, he comes into the story earlier in that, but he's not necessary in the story before. Yeah. He's just kind of like, I'm also in this room with a scary smiley face nodding at what's going on. It's
no clothes and a diaper.
I'm very curious who they cast as Fade Rotha. He is related to the Baron Harkonnen, Vladimir
Alexander Skarsgård.
That's, people are saying like do a Skarsgård,
do it,
and I was like, or Bill, because he's kind of creepy. And Bill Skarsgård's going to be in John Wick, so maybe he's going to learn some fighting things. Because Fade Rotha will be a physical.
He's a warrior.
Yeah, he is a warrior character.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting to see. As far as how close, that was a lot. Wow. Are you good? Is your neck, is your head still attached to your shoulders?
It is. I'm gonna put some icy hot roll on here because I'd like to thank the truck that hit me really hard and that broke a bone in my neck in 2018, because now I'm always in pain.
Shout out, if you are watching this stream, please donate $300 for Mara's medical grievances. Thank you. Yeah, I think that there were some things that were omitted from it, but that's always going to be the case. Look at Harry Potter. Peeves wasn't in a single movie. That's a problem.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that
justice for Spew.
I can't imagine this movie. Being under 3 hours and any better. I'll put it that way. I think the only other way would to be trying a series again. Which there's going to be a Bene Gesserit series, apparently, if all goes well, that he wants to do an HBO Max, which interesting to do a whole series based around like the sisterhood, but I'm here for it and I'll watch that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that each person would have a different like little snippet of something they wished was in something or taken out of something when it's an adaptation. Like even the Jurassic Park book, like it's different from the movie quite a bit in a lot of ways. And so it's like, I think you'll get a million different answers, but I think that regardless of the small thing that I wish they had included, which I hope is on an extended cut on home release, I think that it was an incredibly well-designed adaptation. I think that to explain as much as they explained without using an incredible amount of voiceover, without using like a bunch of text on screen, without clunky stuff like, oh, remember that time when, or oh, you don't remember? That's this person, the head of this thing. Like, I just think that it was done with such care.
I'll tell you a character that did not get their due that I would have liked to see more of was Thufir Howat. I had to look up the name a little bit because I kind of remembered it. He was the Mentat that worked with the Duke and with the Atreides family. Because there's a whole subplot of him casting suspicion on Jessica being the traitor in the Atreides family. And that goes on for like several chapters. And then she has to bring him to task. And
so there was a suspicion storyline then, because I don't think they touched on that whatsoever.
No, they didn't.
No.
Okay.
And they also really went brief over the handmaiden character of Shout Out Mates, I believe is her name.
The one with the cis knife?
Yeah, the Chris knife, but you were very close. Cis knife is probably what you use to cut the giant pimple-looking thing on your back.
I just assumed it was a knife that was born self-identifying as that very knife.
Exactly. That's where I meant to say that.
I want to welcome somebody onto the show that saw Dune before any of us, because he is a silly, silly bastard goose. Hey, Maddie. How's it going, Maddie Gutter?
Yeah. What's up?
Hey, so much energy.
What a welcome. Are you awake yet?
We're gonna start this whole conversation over. Tell us everything about Dune for the next hour.
Silly bastard goose. Okay, I get it. Hey everyone, how are we?
Doing good.
Are you awake? What time is it there? 7? 7
8? It is currently 8:12. Yeah, I've been awake a couple of hours. I just did some boxing drills and to wake myself up, and yeah, here.
Right on, buddy. How many times have you seen Dune? Because you saw it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
I've seen it 3 times now.
So you hate it?
Yeah, I totally hate it. It's the worst thing ever made. I don't want them to make a part 2 at all.
Can you just say Dune is shite? I just need to hear it from your lips.
Dune is absolute shite. I hate it. Dune, I would happily put it in my top 10 of all time. I think it's incredible. I think it's amazing. And I think I've already seen quite a lot of people that have said we just want to stay at home and watch it. If you can go and see it in a cinema or movie theater, IMAX, whatever, do so, because it's incredible. The first time I watched it, the amount of times I caught myself with my jaw wide open, I was like, wow.
How did they do that?
Is incredible. Yeah. Like all the stuff with the sandworm, I was like, oh my God, it just looks incredible. And I don't know, are you guys talking spoilers or?
Yeah, go for it. Many spoilers.
No rules.
MVP for me, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. Incredible. You guys know I love my broy action stuff, and he was amazing.
There was some broy action stuff.
A lot of broy action stuff, and
I love how the shields are realized. The personal shields are realized in this. I thought that was really great. Maddie, have you seen the 84 film?
I have not, but I've heard it's absolute trash.
Have you
watch it?
Have you seen the shields?
That's what I was gonna say. Bring up that image. Image.
Oh boy,
Mara, is it good? Would you recommend watching it?
Oh, it's not good. I recommend watching it.
I'm probably gonna love it then.
Yeah,
I love bad movies. I mean, I'm not gonna say that is a bad movie you should love, but man, it is a bad movie worth watching.
Okay.
I think the scariest thing is, I believe the character's name is Aaliyah. I won't say anything about the character, but her little like gremlin voice at the end of the movie when she's talking to the bear, she's like, it's like this little 5-year-old kid. You're like, yikes.
Also, how great is Oscar Isaac to everything?
Okay,
Oscar Isaac, yeah.
Are we ready for this?
I hope we get taken down for this scene.
God.
Maddie, tell me you're ready for this.
I'm ready.
they look like Minecraft characters.
Well, they look like cars from Interstellar, except like sad.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for excellent fight choreography, so Momoa was such a great casting for that.
So good. I am also a sucker for great fight choreography, and yeah, I was very, very happy with what I saw in this. Well, some people have asked me like if there was one thing I could change about it, or if there was one thing I dislike about it. So it's not long enough.
Yep.
Aw.
Yeah, not long. I agree. I
Aw.
think. Well, unfortunately, I think they're worried about, understandably, the people coming to it because in-game earned its 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone was going to go see it no matter how long it was. I think Dune could have and should have been 3 hours, but it hadn't earned it yet.
Spoilers, Garth. Spoilers.
Yeah, the Sardaukar. Oh my gosh! So we're talking about like the Sardaukar. I love the way that they like drop in, but the way the Fremen pop out of the sand, I was like screaming in the theater. I was like, "This is so sick!"
I just love how like they dropped in and they're like walking through, and I was like, "What the hell? Where did everyone go?" And they're just reaching up through the sand. I was like, "Oh, that's sick. That's so cool."
And again, that's something that's done through Denis's imagination. There's so many things that were approved upon by what he had in his head. And I think that for me was one of the most exciting things about the movie is just the embellishment on what details we had already had. I think the Thopters are really cool. Just the mobility of them throughout the desert. But I think we talked about Dune for like an hour and 15 minutes. What movies and shows and stuff have you guys been watching this week? I know Lauren's been watching You, so I come in and watch about 5 minutes of that every so often. And I feel a little scared. Like, should I be worried?
I mean,
I don't think I've watched anything this week. I've been playing video games again.
I keep getting playing Twitch notifications.
Yeah, I started playing Metroid Dread because I know Metroid is one of my favorite games of all time, and so that came out a few weeks ago, and I was just waiting until I was like, okay, no more movies. I can play video games again for at least a little bit.
Just a big reminder, since we have a few people watching right now, follow us on Twitch. We have a combined channel right now, but it is called Watching with Wingblade. Go over there on Twitch, check that out. I've been on it in a little bit, but I will. I've been getting caught back up on Young Justice because I knew the 4th season started on HBO, and I've officially started the 4th season. We watched the whole 3rd season in like 1 week. Once that show left Cartoon Network and was on HBO, well, first it was on DC Streaming and HBO Max, they didn't give a fuck, guys. Like they're like, hey, we're gonna have child trafficking. Here's a grave with like 10 dead children bodies in it. Here's a girl that just got pierced by a spear. There's blood everywhere. Here's somebody's like head blowing up, and I was like, "Oh!" And then they're introducing like they're doing an examination of like gender identities. They're having like LGBTQ representation. I was like, "This is fantastic." So I encourage anybody, whether you've started Young Justice or you haven't yet, go on HBO Max, binge the whole thing. Young Justice is incredible, especially if you're a fan of DC content.
I've heard so many good things about it, and shout out to Hector and Adam and them over at Heroes Reforged. They've been talking about it for years, and I love watching their podcast. And yeah, I just haven't been able to get into it yet.
Well, and then you're a fan of like the Outlaw Nation and stuff, and I believe it's Mike Vogel writes or for Young Justice.
He might have used to, yeah.
I saw his name on one of the episodes.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's an animation writer.
Mara,
Jesse.
what have you been watching? Anything?
Well, okay. I'm a sucker for shows about cooking because of course I am. So week to week, I follow Halloween Baking Championship, Halloween Wars. I just finished the most recent season of Nailed It. I'm keeping up week to week on Bake Off, Team Jurgen. Let's see. We also always watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. I'm only halfway through this week's episode. Trying to think of what else. We actually still haven't seen the finale of Ted Lasso season 2, so that's definitely on the docket. I know. Apparently, I really need to watch the finale. I've been busy.
Have you been able to avoid any spoilers or?
Yeah, I have no idea what.
Okay. Good.
No idea what's going to happen.
Well, that's a nice thing about Ted Lasso. I feel like as much as everybody loves it and loves to talk about it, it's not something that you like throw spoilers up about. It's like, oh my God, that episode was so good. That's the spoiler.
Well, it's great because we didn't start season 1 until they were 4 or 5 episodes into season 2, and I had not heard a single spoiler about anything in the show, and I was able to just watch it and experience it without any of it being ruined, which was very, very awesome.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's hard to spoil, I guess, a drama comedy, where there's not like a bunch of huge events that are happening. So you kind of only care about the spoilers if you know the characters anyway. But once you get into a show like that, I mean, obviously the characters suck you in the way whole broadcast goes. It's great.
There was one spoiler where I'm going to be so vague that no one will know what I'm talking about unless they already know it. So please don't worry. But there was an Eternal spoiler going around, which is so shitty that the trades are just gonna put it up in their headlines, like when no one has seen this movie yet.
I know at least 2 of us are aware of it. I don't know about the third one, but yeah, no. Lauren's like, "Do you want to know?" And I was like, "Not really," because she saw it, and she's like, "You will find it soon without looking for it." And then she told me, because I was like, "All right, fine." And literally the next day I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw it 4 times. And I was like, what the hell?
So
I'm actually
woke
kind of
up
glad I saw it because I literally don't know who this person is.
Same.
So I wouldn't have been given like a, oh, that human being when they came on screen. So I'm actually kind of glad that I saw it because
you don't know who
nothing to me.
You don't know who the casting is.
No, I know the name of the person. I'm aware of who they are, but I don't know. I have no idea what they look like. Like if I'd seen them on screen, I would have been like, why does everyone care? I don't know who this human being is.
I don't want to give away too much, but you're probably just going to hear a lot of like teens and preteens squealing up in the audience somewhere.
I have no idea who the character is, and I mean, hearing about it. Yeah, hearing about it afterwards, like, okay, cool. I can see where they might go with the universe in that direction. But as far as like seeing it on screen, that definitely would have been a moment where I'm like, all right, I guess I'll Google it once the credits roll.
Right.
Like that's pretty much where I'll say it's a spoiler for like someone like Coy, who was like, oh, and then everyone else in the theater's like, what do we miss?
That's just, let's see, this week, I think this week, Last Night in Soho comes out later. I haven't got my tickets yet, but I really want to see that. So hopefully there's some
Matt
seats.
Smith film, right?
What's that?
Matt Smith is
Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah,
Anya Taylor-Joy, Edgar Wright. Thomas McKenzie.
I'm seeing it on Thursday.
I hear it's getting good reviews.
I might do. I don't know. I got like Friday and Saturday plans. I might see it like Sunday or Thursday. It depends.
I have trunk or treating on Friday, so I'll be a little busy.
Trunk or treating. Yeah, just spoiler for everyone. We are going to be Shaggy and Daphne, and then we're getting Scooby and Scrappy tags for Maverick and Goose.
Amazing.
That's so cute.
We're trying to decide which is the derpier one that gets to be Scrappy. I have a gland disorder.
Sir Pounce is going to be a candy corn, and Muffin is going to be a bat.
Perfect.
Yep.
Do your animals actually keep their stuff on, though?
Muffin loves wearing clothes. Muffin is just like such a little fashion queen. Sir Pounce doesn't really care. He's just happy to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a good boy. He's the kind of cat that lets the vet do the rectal thermometer, and he just sits there like, I'm just happy that you want to say hello to me.
Oh. Well, all right. That's
how I act with the doctors too. All right, guys. Well, I'm so glad that everyone could join us. I think we're being here about an hour and a half. It's probably a good time to wrap up. Some of us getting up earlier than others, but Mara, thank you so much for being on here. Maddie, thanks for joining at the last second. Sean, as always. Mara, where can the people find you that you want them to find you? Obviously not a random dark alley.
I mean, if I am in an alley, I'm going to be armed. So come at me, bro.
Yeah.
But you can find me looking on the internet at that Mara. It's on the screen right there. And I also lurk around every week on the Finely Tailored channel doing brackets, and every Saturday at 7:00 Central Time, when we're not moving the show for like 7 different reasons, you can catch me on The Basement with my co-host Trevor. I'm also lurking around Dan's Patreon and his YouTube channel, and standing for hours on end in my kitchen making stuff and sending it to people. So you can find me there.
I'm curious what I can send you something for to have made and sent to me, because that sounds really exciting. Maybe some Muddy Buddies. Maddie, where
Drop
can the
your
folks...
address in the DMs. Maybe you'll get a surprise.
Don't think that I will not. I'm going to be on it right now. I'm going to have Maddie say where the folks can find him.
Did anyone see the Roger cake that Mara made yesterday?
I did. Oh my god! I was watching it back, and I saw the cake, and I was just like, "Oh my god, that's the best thing I've ever seen." It's the best cake. Mara, you did an incredible job with that. So where you can find me on Twitter at Matty Gunner, Instagram Matty_Gunner, and every Wednesday and Sunday on the ONU MMA show on the Wild Jones Podcast Network, breaking down the weekend boxing, MMA, kickboxing, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
You ever say the Star Wars show? Did I miss that?
Scoundrels of the Force with myself, PLD, and Richard Eric Jarvie. That's currently on a little bit of a hiatus because Paul's got a lot of stuff going on with the FCL at the minute. But yeah, you can catch me there too when we're back.
Yeah, well, go watch old stuff, because Star Wars talk is always a good time. Sean, other than Sunday Speakeasies, where can people find you now that you're crushing it at the FCL season has come to a close?
For now, we'll see what happens next year. Over here's my name, Sean Wingblade. Spell it correctly, Sean, S-E-A-N. And also on Twitch, we've already put the link in. Scroll back up, or we can do it again. At Watching with Wingblade on Twitch, which might have a name change coming soon for since Jesse and I are combining most of our things together.
With our powers combined.
With our powers combined, why not? And I finally started playing video games a little bit again, because I hadn't for like months. I was busy elsewhere. But Metroid Dread is up there, and maybe a little bit of Call of Duty, other things, such as this show, because we are simulcasting to everywhere. Go over there and follow and subscribe. Like this video. Like those, you can't like those videos, but you can follow the channel.
Yeah.
Kitty.
Who's a good boy? Are you a good boy?
We're just going to
so
sit
happy
here.
right now.
Well, you guys can find me, of course, here every Sunday at 11 p.m. talking about who knows what. Next week might be really random because I don't know what we're going to be talking about. But the following week, I'm sure we'll be talking about Eternals and stuff. But it's just whatever's clever. And
next
then
week is Halloween, isn't it?
Yeah. So spooky stuff.
I might be busy. At 11 o'clock at night. My kids will be sleeping by then.
We'll see.
They got school in the morning.
And then really easy to remember, 12 hours after the Speakeasy is our Monday morning show, News and Views, with me and Scott Fox talking about whatever's been happening in the last week. If you want to talk about Dune some more, I guarantee we're going to talk about Dune some more. So there is that. Also follow us, like Sean said, on Twitch. But very importantly, check out our audio podcast. We do some special things on there that are only on there, like spoiler-free Dune review. Me and Scott got into that fresh out of the theater, so that was a lot of fun. And you can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, all the pockets, all the casts, all the Radio Public, all that good stuff. Do that. All the links for that are in the description. What else is in the description, though? See this baby right here? You can get one, too. That's right. We're starting to do T-shirts, hoodies, and all that good stuff. Stickers. Everyone loves their stickers. Skateboard. Yeah, haven't done that yet, but we'll figure that one out. That's on the very, very bottom of the description. So if you would like to support the channel and look super fly while doing that, please click that link. We really appreciate it. And help me get to Spectacular. Donate to all these podcasts and things. We still have a little bit of
you've
time.
got to be there, dude. If I'm flying all the way out from London, you got to be there.
I know. You're going there. Jacob London's going to be there. And I'm just in Washington like, hey, I'm broke. Help.
I'll be there.
Yeah, Mara's going to be there. Sean's going to be there.
It's going to be a party.
I don't want to be the one loser, so please help me be losers with everybody else. All right, guys. So until next time, please keep it real. And it was awesome having you. Enjoyed having this conversation. Here's one more look at that beautiful face.
That's pretty.
All right.
That's pretty.
Take it easy. Hey everyone, Jesse here, and don't exit out quite yet. While I have you, I want to take just a quick second to talk with you about something that's very important to me. Right now on the Flick and Reel channel, we're just a couple of guys sitting around and speaking geek, but we think that we can build into something greater. We think that we can build a community, a place for all of us to come together and talk about our thoughts and experiences about various types of fandoms. For this to happen, though, we do need your help, so please do me a huge favor and subscribe to the channel. Along with that, click that little bell icon that notifies you anytime that we upload new content for your viewing pleasure. So again, thank you so much for stopping by and visiting us this week. We hope we'll see you again next week. And just remember, until then, keep it real.